Okay, we're live.
Think I have to. Hey everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Camilla, and I'm super excited to be here with you with my partner, Rosanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosanna, and we are going to have an awesome conversation today. And we're both really excited to have this live, have you guys join us and ask questions because the topic is going to be amazing.
So today we're going to dive into secrets of the millionaire mind for women in their 40s and 50s. So we're taking a lot of what we're just going to kind of discuss this amazing book that I have right here. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind: Mastering the Inner Game of Wealth by T. Harv Eker. And this is a really great book. And he has 17, that's a lot. I know we're not going to do all 17 today, but he has 17 different points and different things that you should consider as you really work on the inner game of wealth. So I just want to read to you a little section here and in the beginning where he talks about having what's called a money blueprint. So he says that there are, we live in a world of duality, right? Up and down. There's light and dark. There's hot and cold. And a lot of people, when they think of money, they think of it as the exterior thing, like business knowledge, money management, and investment strategies. We're absolutely going to teach you those investment strategies, and those are essential, but the inner game, he says right here, is just as important. So there's an analogy of a carpenter and their tools. So if you have top of the line tools, that's imperative, right? You have to have top of the line tools. But being a top notch carpenter who really masterfully uses those tools is even more crucial. So he has this saying, it says, it's not enough to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And so really we're going to kind of get into who are you? How do you think? What are your beliefs? What are your habits? How do you really feel about yourself? How confident are you in yourself? And if you truly feel that you truly deserve to be wealthy. And that's one of the things that we're really going to work on. And so with this book, he has 17 different, he calls them wealth files, right? So what's a wealth file? Well, a wealth file is basically an interesting concept to understand and how you think about it. And so basically we're going to be asking you a question. The questions are going to be, do you believe this or that, right? And the wealthy mindset is one of those, and a poor mindset is the other one. So let's jump into the first one. The first one is, do you believe that you create your life, or do you believe that life happens to you? So, Bruzana, what do you think about that?
Well, ideally, you want to create life. I think in the beginning, actually, life happens to you a lot because you're a child, and your parents happen to you, and then your teachers happen to you, and then society and pressures. So there is a lot of opportunity for us for our lives. Not even an opportunity; it just happens that our lives are shaped by others, and you can continue in that way for the rest of your life and just kind of live by default, right? So hey, I go to school, I go to college, I get married, I get a job, and sort of things happen to me. But at some point you can also subconsciously just take a step back and raise your awareness of what is happening to you and decide whether you're happy with the state of affairs as they are, or there is more to life that you're just not taking advantage of. And that creates a lot of, I think you mentioned duality, right? It's just your internal level of anxiety or dissatisfaction, and your sort of external facade of, hey, having a successful career and a successful sort of a quote unquote life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you at a point where you want to just change the way things are, and just start having more of a proactive approach to what happens to you and the direction and the actions that you take, which will have the ramifications, then you adopt that. No, that's it. I'm done. I'm saying no to everything. I'm sitting down and figuring out what it is that I actually want to do versus what everybody else thinks I should want.
Mhm.
So to me, I think I taking an approach to life where you make things happen is much more satisfying in the long term.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
don't think I really started to take this approach of creating my own life until I was in my 40s. So I'll give you a silly example. When I was young, I grew up on a little farm and we had farm animals, and I really loved that. I loved that part of growing up for me. It was a great escape. It was a great to be with the animals, and I just love animals. And so in my adult years, I was like, I want to recreate this animal farm life for my children. But guess what? I didn't, because life happened to me. I didn't take those intentional steps to do it until we moved to Texas. So my job was moving us to Texas. And I told my husband, I said, we are going to have chickens. And he was like, what? I was like, yes, we're having chickens and we have to find a place to live that will allow us to have chickens. Do you know how hard that is to find a place to live that will allow you to have chickens? We had to be very intentional. We started looking all over. We looked at subdivision here and a subdivision there, and it was cheaper to buy houses in the subdivisions. But I was like, nope, they won't allow chickens. They won't allow chickens. We can't do it. And I had to be really intentional and almost, fight for my desire for chickens. And guess what? Today we live out in Texas. We have over an acre of land out in the country where there's no restrictions on us. And I've got 10 chickens, 3 ducks, 3 goats, two mini pigs, and we've got our own little mini farm, and it's amazing. But I didn't do it until I was in my 40s. And actually, most of my children are grown because I had my children young. So I kind of regret that I did not create that life in the beginning, but I have it now and I love it. So creating your life is just being more intentional. I think as women in our 40s and 50s, too, it's prime time for us to create the life that we want. I think a lot of life has kind of happened to us, but you got to get into that mindset is that you create the life that you want, not life just happens to you. Otherwise, life will just keep happening to you and you'll never get the farm that you've always wanted, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. Just fight for what you want deep down and just haven't really verbalized it. So
Mm-hmm.
the second
Yeah.
millionaire, what are we calling millionaire mindset, that
Yeah.
we want to talk about is play the money game to win versus not to lose. So do you believe that money is for winning or not losing? So Camila, what do you think?
I always think about the game Monopoly, as in a classic game from our childhood, right? I don't know when it came out, but it's been around for a really long time. But if you play Monopoly and all you do is go around and collect $200 at go, you hit go and you collect your $200, you're never going to win the game. Right. And so you definitely have to invest. You have to buy properties. You have to put hotels and houses on them and charge people money in order to win. And so I think of this concept as, well, it's risky. It could be risky when you land on Park Place and it costs $350 or $3,000 or something, and you have only $4,000, but it costs $3,000. It's a risk, right, to buy that property. But in order to win the game, you have pretty much need to have Park Place or Boardwalk, right? I don't think you can. I don't think anybody in my experience has ever won the game without having Park Place and Boardwalk at some point, right? They acquire it. And so you have to play the money game to win. So having that winner's mentality, and okay, I might be a little crazy, but when I play games with my kids, I don't ever let them win because I want to teach them that they've got to work really hard to win. They're not going to be able to win by just because mom lets them. And so some games I destroy them and I'm okay with that. And I'm that parent that destroys them and they have to learn. But I'll tell you, when my daughter got smart enough to actually beat me for real in a game, do you know how sweet that moment was? Like she was so proud of herself that she actually beat mom in one of these games. And so really playing to win, I'm all for playing to win instead of playing not to lose. I'm always on offensive. I like offense better than defense. Defense is important. You can't win football games without a good defense. But if you don't have a stellar offense, also you will not win games.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And to your point of, kids know when you're playing for real or not. They may take
Yeah.
you out because they're smart, but yes, knowing that, hey, now I deserve that, I think it gives them that boost of confidence and also the desire to learn something else and really get better. So totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, my
Yep.
once my tennis coach said, "Well, play for your kids for real because there will be time when you won't be able to." So I followed
That's
that
right.
advice, and sure enough,
That's
um,
right.
that was
That's right.
yeah. um,
Awesome. Okay. Well, the third one is, are you committed to being wealthy versus do you just want to be wealthy? And I think we all want to be wealthy, but what does true commitment look like, do you think, Rosanna?
Commitment to be wealthy to me is looking at money in ways that aren't just something that just given to you and you kind of spend and it kind of sort of goes. It's a resource and that it's your weapon you use in building wealth. When you look at it that way, you start making more conscious choices about your money and where it should go. So money just becomes it becomes your investment, it becomes your savings, it becomes your opportunity. It's not something that you mindlessly just use. So I think commitment to being wealthy is first understanding that how you treat your money is going to make a huge difference. And then understanding that you actually need to work on yourself and educate yourself and take the time to understand money, understand wealth, and how it's created. So it's just like everything else. If you want to be good at something, you need to learn about it and then you need to practice it. So commitment to being wealthy, it's practicing um, all the steps that are necessary that bring to creating that wealth. Because yeah,
Mhm.
desire is there, but if you don't have a plan, then it's just an empty sort of thought process that doesn't help.
Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
compare it to health, your health too, right? We all want to be healthy. We all want
Mhm.
to have strong bodies and not weak bodies. But if we don't have a plan and we're not committed to being healthy, it's not just going to happen, right? Like stuff like that doesn't happen. So it's the same thing with wealth. So health and wealth, it's really cool how they kind of go hand in hand. And you've got to have both in order to live, this robust life. So what's
Yeah.
number four?
Number four is think big versus think small. So thinking big, like how do we think big?
So I was listening to this podcast. And it's a new podcast that came out, and Rosanna and I were both there when they were kind of launching it at a
Mhm.
conference. We went to a conference called FinCon, and it's called the Billionaire Creator Podcast. And it's kind of a bold title, right? Billionaire creator. How do you become a billionaire? And the man and the woman who are leading hosts of this podcast, they were asking that question. They were saying, if you're running a business that brings in 1 million in revenue, could you double that and get to 2 million? Yeah, probably pretty easy. But they want to ask bigger questions. They want to say, well, how could you make it be a $50 million company? Right. And then that $50 million, how, if you already have $50 million company, how could you make it be $100 million company and then eventually get to 1 billion? So it was really interesting. You guys should check out their podcast, but because they're asking much bigger questions. And I have a book right here too called $100 million offers. So again, thinking bigger. So instead of like trying to make $1 million in a year, what if you tried to make 100 million? One other example I had too was in terms of impact. So I know a woman who teaches people how to be real estate investors, and her goal is to help 1 million women learn how to invest in real estate. And I asked her about that goal. I was like, poof, that's a big goal. Because when I first started out, I was like, I want to help 1,000 women, right? And she said, no, if I set a million, like a goal to help a million women, suddenly I have to think differently about where I go and be a guest on a podcast, for example. So now she's like going after bigger podcasts. She's going after bigger marketing, expenses, and she's really throwing herself into this so she can get to that 1 million women goal, which I think was just amazing. She blew my mind about how to think bigger. And I was like, I felt very small. Like, wow, I'm thinking very small compared to you.
Yeah, I think it's a change it's a shift in the mindset and the what do you need to think about and how you think about. You know how they say to go 10x, you need to ditch 80% of what you're doing and focus on the 20%. Then there is this understanding like, well, first you need to go through the 80%, understand what it is, and then ditch them. So there is some foundation you need to build first. But then after that, it's what it's just that classic and what got you here won't get you there,
Yeah.
right? So really understanding the shift in your activities, in your actions, like you said, Camilla, the two people you talk to, what you focus in on, how you spend your day, what kind of outcomes you seek, to completely change your perspective. Because if you want to grow a little bit, you can just do more of what you're doing now, versus when you're
Mhm.
thinking about something bigger, you just kind of have to ditch everything that you're doing. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's an easy proposition.
Mhm.
It requires a lot of sort of flexibility of mind and really just analyzing what brings results and how to identify those 20%. But just because you're thinking bigger, I think your perception will change, and over time you can identify, okay, so what are these shifts that are going to take me from one step to the next to the next to the next.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of like hard things, so number 5 is hard for me. It says to focus on opportunities versus the obstacles. And sometimes I think that my brain, and maybe most women's brain, because we have so much going on all the time in our brains, we tend to focus on the negative, right? We focus on the obstacles that are in the way, and instead of looking at the opportunities, right? And I heard a speaker on stage, and he said, really, your life has 2 pages to it. On one page is all the good things that happen in your life, and on the other page is all the bad things, right? I mean, if we want to go back to duality, right? This simple, just we just really simplify this. Good things happen to us, bad things happen to us. And he said, so which page do you read more often? Do you read the negative page, the bad things that are happening, or do you read the positive page, the good things that are happening? And it kind of blew me away, because as I was sitting there in the audience, I was like, oh, yeah, I think I read the negative page
Yeah, same
more
here.
than I read the positive page, because my brain has a tendency to focus on all these things that are going wrong and things I need to fix now, instead of all the things that are going right. And so sometimes you need like a good friend or a partner or someone to pat you on the head and be like, hey, you're doing a good job, Camilla. Good job. But you really have to train your brain to focus on the opportunities, right? Versus all the obstacles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And then again, I think it's everything that happens in life, you can view it as it's just a fact, right? Something happens, and how you view it is a lot of it is, do you view it as in positive light or negative light? But,
Yeah.
and I think some very rarely, but some people are innately more positive. Most of us are way more negative than we need to be, and we need to consciously um, consciously separate those, understand that that's where our mind goes, and come up with ways to really stop us and just to reverse that logic.
Mm.
And um, Yeah, what you focus on expands, right? Absolutely. That there is
Yeah.
obstacles to everything. Everything you do, you can say, well, these are the reasons that this will go wrong. And you can come up with a lot of reasons. There is probably fewer reasons for which something was going to go right. But if you focus on those, then things will go right.
Mhm.
Because you just do what brings you results, and just kind of the obstacles kind of go by the wayside because you're just not nourishing them, you're not feeding them, you're not engaging with them. um,
Mhm.
I think it's just where does your action take you? If you focus on opportunities, then you act, which actually makes those opportunities come true, versus if you focus on obstacles, you're paralyzed and then it becomes true. So that it just kind of feeds on itself. That's
Yeah.
what I've
Yeah.
kind of realized in whenever I engage in a project. I'm like, oh, I could think about 1,000 ways this could go wrong, but no, that's not as much fun actually.
I think a good question to ask yourself is, instead of what if it all goes wrong, you could reverse that question and ask yourself, but what if it all goes right? And think
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
that, right? Like I love that concept. Okay, so we're now on number 6. Rosanna, what's number 6?
But you know what? I love this one. This is, I think, so far is my favorite. It says admire other successes versus resenting them. And it is such an interesting concept because we live in a very competitive society. Everybody's just out there with well, I have this, I have that, my millions and my cars and things like that. And you're like, well, how did they get there? So I think what this principle would allow you to do is actually take heart in the fact that the success is possible, and it gives you an idea of what success can be, so that you can learn from this person or from this company that has had the success. So you can look at it as somebody leading the way. You can view them as a competitor, or you can view them as a teacher. Once you view somebody as a teacher, then you actually can learn to appreciate what they have achieved, understand how they did it, and how you adapt it to your own situation. And that will lead you to success faster than resenting somebody's success and sort of wasting brain cells on negativity that we were just talking
Yeah.
about.
I love that concept. Instead of viewing them as a competitor, view them as a teacher. That's so powerful. You know, when I started one of my businesses, Steady Stream Investments, which is an investment business, and the whole concept is that, you know, I'm trying to put together groups of investors to purchase larger properties, like an apartment complex, for example. And what we do is we just pool our money and then we go out and we buy it, and everyone shares in the profits. Well, when I first started out doing this, it's kind of like that new car concept. You get a new car and you think it's unique, and then suddenly you see your car everywhere, right? Everywhere you go, you're like, everybody has the same car as me, like, and theirs looks nicer and shinier than mine does, and you start comparing. Well, the same thing happens in business. You launch a business, and suddenly, you know, the algorithms know that you're doing this business, and so they start showing you other people's businesses because they think you might be interested. And then you see them post their successes online, and like I had a hard time because I was immediately, my first reaction was, oh man, they're doing so good. There's no way I'm going to be able to do as good as them. But you're right. Like it's flipping, I had to really work on that and flip that around to view them not as competitors, but as teachers. Like, what can I learn from them? What are they doing that I could incorporate into my business in order to, you know, expand and grow? I think that's powerful, Rosanna. Good job with that one.
Thank you. Yes, yeah.
So to recap, so we want to recap. So there were 6 things we talked about today, and so just I'm going to recap all the different things. So number one, you think about creating your life versus life just happening to you, right? Take control of what you want your life to look like. Number two, play the money game to win, not to lose, right? So you're not trying to not lose, you're trying to actually win the game. Number three, you have to be committed to being wealthy. You can't just want it, right? Number four, think big, don't think small, right? You can do big things in life. Number five, focus on opportunities versus obstacles, read that good page often, and then more good things are going to show up and opportunities are going to start. Their opportunities are everywhere if we're looking for them. And number 6, admire other success. Don't resent it and cheer for them. I think what we really want to create is a group of women who is cheering for each other, and celebrating when someone has an amazing success. It's what we want to do. So thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to be here every Tuesday at around noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, to come live on our channel and just share ideas. So next week, we're going to dive into the next 6 concepts in this Secrets of the Millionaire Mind and just help you train your brain to be able to create the wealth that you want to create. So thanks so much for joining. Bye for now.
Thank you guys. See you next week.